Okay, let's start. Hello, everybody. Thanks that you're coming to my speech. I'm very glad to see you. And my name is Artem Sokovets, and today I will tell you about how Java features can improve our page object model. As I said, my name is Artem Sokovets. I am a team leader at Sberbank Technology, and I am in test automation about 4 years. And I like Java, have 2 Oracle certificates, OCP and OCA, and now I am studying Kotlin. Moreover, I write different automated articles, and last one was about Selenium cluster with Kubernetes. My plan will go through 4 points. First, I remind what wrappers exist for page object. Next, I show what questions I dislike in current page object. After that, I dive to the page object based on interface, and in the end of my speech, I show you where you can use, where you can try, where you can find a new approach. Where you can try new approach. Okay, imagine that you are a test engineer and you have never automated before, and you work at a web application project, and someday your boss come to you and ask, Jimmy, we must to make a test automation in our project, and you say, okay, boss. You don't have another way how you agree with him, or you can try to find a new job. Last one is joke. And after sleepless night, I think, find solution. The famous instrument for this way, it's Selenium API. And on the slide, you see example of test where we use Selenium API. We use open our page, use different methods, find elements, and case, submit, or click. And you do what boss wanted, and he is happy. Okay, after some time, you want to improve your tests. You should improve your test, and you can find page object model. It is a very famous design pattern, and even my grandmother knows this design pattern. And this page object exists with different wrappers. Most used of them you see on the slide. First, chain invocation. It helps to work with pages context, which we need. Then page element or HTML wrapper. It adds additional wrapper for our HTML components and add additional logic to our component. And loadable component, it is help us when we want to wait is our page load. And last one, screenplay. It is pattern introduced in Serenity tool, and it adds additional behavior to our test step. In my test project, I prefer page element. On the slide, you can see a Gitter header, and I describe this header. I set a class, Java class, and I set search input element, and add additional method search and interact with this web element. I think it is easy for you. And we can add, describe different layers, a different block, for example, header, text block, table, and add logical method to this block. For example, in table, I can add method to interact with the last row of this table, and then call it. When I use this different kind of wrappers, mostly I become disappointed, and maybe who likes these wrappers also? Do you know these wrappers which I show? Page element, loadable component. Okay. Okay. First question which I didn't like is that if I use page element wrapper, I must copy paste each layer to pages. For example, if my main page use header, I must to set it in this page. If another page use this layer, I must to set this layer also to this class, and by this way I must do copy paste and I use duplicates of elements. It is not a good way. And second point which I dislike, there are many elements which contains similar locators. You see on the slide that the locators are same but with little difference. Only red text is different. And in our page object model we didn't have parameterized element and no parameterization for elements in current page object model. And if we have many elements, they are identical, and also we use getters for this method and constructor, and we get boilerplate code. By the way, there are 3 questions which I don't dislike. And if we see at Java, there are many versions introduced. Now I remember that JDK 12 introduced, and for example, JDK 8 introduces Lambda. And with Lambda, we changes our vision to standard Go patterns. And maybe all the features of Java can improve our page object model. Let's see. It is time to the next generation of page object, which use interface instead of class and use method instead of class variables. On the slide, you see that I use Java Cairo interface and set my page. Okay. And then I set method trial which describe my web element and set locator and try to compare these two approach. On the left side you see the old way where we use class and class variables and constructor and getter method for each element, and on the right side you see a new approach where we use interface and methods to describe our web element. And what if we use interface, how they improve our test? Imagine that we have a form with 3 web elements. First it is text input for username, then text input for password, and 1 button sign up. And if you use all the way, you must describe each element. You must describe username, you must describe password, and also set constructor, getters. And if you look on the slide, we have similar locator, but with a little difference, and only red text is different. And we can, if we use method, we can to make our web element parameterized, and I set a parameter to my method, and when I call this method, I set my argument, and my value will replace red text in braces, and by this way we can use parameterized element. I think it is a cool idea. Do you think also with me? Do you agree with me? Nobody. You're right. What is it's JDK 8 or yes, JDK 8. Okay, And on your test, it will look like this example. First, we get context of our page. Then we use parameterized element. We set our param, login or password, and then we use Selenium API methods. For example, send case, click, and another method which you want. And if we look to these GitHub layers, we can use page element and describe these layers by the old way. You see that I set class header and describe one element, and then when I need to use this header, I must copy paste to each pages where I use it. With interface, I also it is the same way. I describe some layer, set with header and use header layer, but it's more powerful. We can use this layer in different pages. For example, if my main page use header, I set it. If any page use my header, I set it, but you can combine different layers. For example, header, footer, sidebar, and you can, if you want, you can set to your page. If you don't want, you don't do it. And by this way, we use multiple inheritance, and also we can use multiple inheritance for elements. On the slide, you see that it is also GitHub headers, and there are 4 buttons. And what we can do, we can set parameterized elements, and then we can use this button in different layers. For example, we can set button and extend it from a header extend button, or footer can extend button, input, or we can introduce different new checkbox, for example, or text input, and or we can make filter and our layer extend from this component. And by this way, we reduce boilerplate code. And let's look at example. It is the same. First, we get context of our page, get layers, get button. It is a parameterized button, set our value, and then use Selenium API click. And the second line we use the same in the same way, but we use send case. Okay. Your website consists of different pages, and each pages has different elements. For example, button, checkbox, link, button, link, text area, button, input. And in your code, you can describe one element, parameterized element, which will be described all these elements. For example, you can set in this way you have a relationship one-to-many. In your code, you set one element which describe, for example, all checkbox on your site. Also, in the GTK 8 introduced default method, and for example, you want to merge these 2 lines at one, and how we can do it? We can set our default method, and we in first line we clear our element, and then we return our element. To this point, we can add additional logic, what we want, and how we use it on our test. First, we get context page, then we use layers, and then we call method which clear my elements, and then I use Selenium API method. We can add different logic to our method what we want, because we can, if our element, okay, we can do different, we can add different logical to this default method. And what benefits we get from interface and from methods? First, we can use parameterized element. Okay, and next we can reduce boilerplate code because we don't need to use constructor and getter methods. And next we can use multiple inheritance. We can set one layer and which has different components using multiple inheritance. And last point, it is default methods, which helps us to add additional logical to our elements. And where you can try this approach, you can find implementation of this mechanism in one open source tool about which I will tell next. It is Atlas. It is a flexible open source tool. It's available in GitHub, github.com/meta Atlas. And do you know Allure report? Allure report, you know. And also this guy developed Atlas. And let's see at Atlas. Okay, Atlas consists of 3 modules. There are core, Atlas WebDriver, and Atlas Appium. Core, it manages our page object, our page, and Atlas WebDriver and Atlas Appium. It is a wrapper for WebDriver and Appium. It reminds that WebDriver we use when we want to automate a web user interface, and Appium we use when we automate mobile application. And how test will be look. On the slide you see that I use entity site, then I get context of my page, open my page, and then I use different layers. On this example I use header, then I call method search input, and then I use Selenium API. And I think it is easy. First point which we need to do when we use Atlas, we must to configure it. We create Atlas instance and set WebDriver configuration, but we can set another, or we can set Appium driver configuration. Next, utility method, we create our page. On this slide, I'm create main page, and last point, we develop our test, and as usual, I use get context of my page, open my page, and then I use different component, different layers, and then I use Selenium API method. Another cool features about which Atlas has is embedded retry. If you know these exceptions, I think you should know it. And if you want to forget about it, and Atlas do it, if one of this method is broken, all this chain will be repeated again. For example, if with clear input is broken, all this chain will repeat again. And we can configure global retry. We use 2 additional methods, timeout and polling. First we use how second do we need to wait while we do retry operation, and polling how often we call our actions with this web element. And we can set custom notation. It is retry and the same parameters if you want. About assertions, this tool has 2 methods. First, should and wait until. Both has a matcher object, and should it throws assertion error, and wait until it throws runtime exception. In the scripts, the main functional checks can be used in the end of test, and by the way, we can separate is the defects, or is the product defects, or the test defects, and we can separate these exceptions and can save time when we will view our test reports. how we use it? First is the same way. We use wait until or should. In this example, I have WebDriver matcher and is displayed. It check is our element displayed, and I also use should tag name. It checked is our web element has input tag name. Also, this open source framework tool has extension model as a G5 has. We can override base functional or custom functional and can inject our own behavior. What we can override? We can override click, clears, and case, or we can override how we find our web element. And first that we need to do, we must create our extension class, which implement interface method extension. After that, we must override two methods. First, test and invoke. Test is check is we override the method which we want, and invoke it inject our behavior which we want. And how we use our extension? When we create Atlas, we use additional utility method extension and set our extension. Moreover, we can add more extension if you want, or add our custom extension. And as I told before, Atlas consists of 3 models, and 2 of them, Atlas WebDriver and Atlas Appium, consist of extensions. Most used of them on the slide. For example, swipe down on extension or swipe up on extension. We use it when we want to make swipe up or swipe down on a mobile application, and page extension we use to when we want to manage our page objects. And you can look at this each extension, and if you don't like behavior, you can override it and set your own behavior. For example, imagine you want to override method click because in many time click didn't correctly work in Selenium API when we make automation with Internet Explorer browser, and we want to override click. What we must do? Yes, we want to override click in all test projects. First, we create extension, check that we override a click method. Then we override invoke method and get our WebDriver instance. Then we cast this driver to JavaScript executor, and after that we make JavaScript click by this way. And then when we create Atlas instance, we add this extension, JS click extension, and in all our test project we use Java click extension. Next, if you want to try Atlas, all jars are available in Maven Central, the last version 1.5, and you can try Atlas Appium or Atlas WebDriver. Okay, Atlas can integrate with popular instruments such as Joint5, TestNG, Cucumber, JBehave, LearnFT, or can integrate with your own test frameworks if you have. And if you don't like new framework, or if you don't want to use it, you can use new approach which use interface based, which use page object based on interface. You can integrate this approach to your project. First, you must set loader, decorator, and set your custom page. I recommend you to see module of Atlas, core module, and take mechanism from it and inject to your framework. That's all. Thank you for attention. Subscribe to my Twitter because I will write articles about the next generation of Puppeteer object, and you can look at. I make examples at GitHub. I make 3 examples where I use vanilla Selenium, page element example, and where can and a new way where I use interface based, where I use page object based on interface. And also Atlas has support channel. It is Telegram. Thank you for time. That's all.
Время для вопросов.
Можете на любом. You can ask me
Okay,
what question you want.
Yeah, thanks for the report. My question is really simple, actually. About a year ago, I came up with some kind of similar solution. Similar because I came up with it in C#, not in Java, actually. So as I've understood from your presentation at the beginning, the idea is that we are not defining specific pages, specific classes for the pages. We are just creating some meta class for pages, like the page, the header of it, or the footer of it, and then we are combining those elements. So the problem I was facing back then was that, for example, if you have an element like the drop down with items, and we are having those, let's name them relative locators for the elements based on the unique texts in them. I was not able to fix the issue when the drop down was having 2 elements with the same text. Does your approach some kind of solving this problem?
I think in this way you must to use a default method, and you can handle this drop-down list. You use default methods in this way, and I think it helps for you. You use C#, yes?
Yeah.
I think C# has default method. Try to use it. And in default method you make what you want, and you handle these elements and this drop-down list.
Got it. And the second question is that does that approach applicable for all the web applications? Because, for example, the application that I was testing was a website created via CRM, and the problem there was that it consisted without any logic. It was just an informative website, but there were about 20 languages, 20 versions of the website in different languages, and the problem was that each day, every day, the site might be changed, because some kind of manager will open the CRM and add in another page, throwing it, and it's already in prod. So does that approach can fix that? Does it applicable for those kind of web applications?
Yes, you can use this approach, because if your web application changes and your locators also change, and by this way you can use one element, which describe many elements on your site, and in one place you change, and that's all.
Yeah, but that means that each day we have to have a person that will maintain that, right?
If your locators change every day, yes.
Yeah.
But I think if you use vanilla Selenium, you also must to have a guy who will fix it.
Okay, thanks.
Okay.
Thank you. Do you have an integration with Puppeteer API?
No. I know that Alexey Baranov talked about it yesterday, but it's Puppeteer. It is a protocol, and no. Okay. Just no. By this time, no.
Thank you for your talk. Can you please scroll down the example with those like search or buttons or whatever? So when we have maybe a little bit, so when we are with interface, we are declaring several buttons which are has similar locators except the text inside on it. So what do you think? Such approach?
This
maybe,
slide?
yeah, and the next. One more. Oh, stop. Yeah.
Okay.
So, for example, in this flow, we are specifying that we are looking for button with price on the header, right?
Yes.
And let's imagine we have like hundreds page objects, yeah. So it's like in the old, let's say, fashioned way. So when I building this case, navigating a specific like page, when I press a dot, it usually suggests me which elements actually available. So I could not remember the right pronunciations, or maybe there are no button at all. Maybe it's like checkbox or like, I don't know. So in this way, I think we are losing this help of IDE when IDE suggests you which elements are available. So it's kind of making this API, which actually like page object is actually API providing extra services above the web elements. So we are like entering on the like foggy, you know?
No, in this way also the same way.
If I put header dot, what happens?
Yes, if you put a head, IDE show you what
button, okay.
what methods this layer has.
Okay. Yeah, without any text. So for example.
But it is parameterized element, and all your text will use in.
I have to open this page, you know, because to remember that search is actually search, and that fine.
Why on this example? See, we use a layer header and we set different button which this layer exists. For example, button, input, checkbox, and on the test you get context of your page. Then you get layers, and all elements from this header you will see. IDE will show you.
But for example, search. Yeah, so I will not see the search, this quote, because it can be search or find, and
no, yes, you will see parameterized element.
So we always need to duplicate the searches.
Yeah. So this was my question.
You can call me that I have duplicated.
Yeah. So
you
personally, I would like to see like input search as a constant. Yeah, and I can see that in this page I have button price and another button
okay,
search.
can you explain else example? I don't understand. You can use default method. You can add additional logical to default method.
No.
I'm always using header, and you can imagine pop-up where I always see button OK or approve.
Okay.
And I remember that I will go to this pop-up, but I don't remember what exactly text will be on this button, OK or approve. And if it's your approach, I need to go to the site and check which text I will have. And this
by traditional way, we use a boilerplate code. You used getters, constructor, a ton of elements, and this way. But in this way, you have no. Yes, yes, you must remember some words. No, I think it is not. For me, it is not problem. If you want, we can discussing after my speech.
Yeah, I won't just help you up with the answer. I guess I get it. I was facing the same problem, actually. The solution for that is that you have some kind of enums with the items that are available on that page. Or you can just have the general enum with the options like, OK, button on that page, so it will contain the text of the page. And also you can extend that to different languages. So it will be like okay in Russian, okay in English, but something like, I don't know, blah blah in German. Sorry if somebody is from Germany. So that's the idea actually.
Yes, you're right. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your presentation. I have a question about this model, about the communication with your colleagues. Communication about code. This model is about a refactoring process that makes something simpler and more readable. But on the other hand, you will have additional information about, because you created more classes, more new files, and so on. And so you have additional information about these bindings of these classes and the main test code. And how do you share the information with your colleagues? So the connection between these classes. Do you write special documentation, or do you make some comments?
I don't understand question. If
The question is that you make it simpler, but on the other hand, you make it more difficult because you create some new entities, new classes, and so on. And for another tester, for another automated tester, it couldn't be very obvious why you simplify in such way. What about this information? How do you simplify it?
Okay, this tool is more flexible, and you can make it such as Gradle. Do you know is different Maven and Gradle? And it's also this tool is a constructor. You construct what you want, and how I tell for my colleague information. We don't have any information because both test engineers work into one project, and they understand this project, and they commit every day, and I don't see any problems with communication. What are you afraid? What?
There is some misunderstanding because my colleague tries to make code simpler, and it is more readable, but I couldn't get what the logic is behind this simplification. And so
I think by this way
if you work shoulder to shoulder and elbow to elbow with your colleague, it is okay. But if you work with colleague with another country, you can have different views on the simplification. And
by this way you have maybe merge request or pull request, and you can see what your colleague you can see his code, and you can commit that it is wrong or it is right.
Okay, thank you. I got you.
Okay.
What is the pitfalls under your new solution? What's an underwater rocks I can face if I'm going to use your framework?
You will be a superstar. Okay, first, this new vision of page object, it will reduce of your code. In this way, you don't first you have parameterized element, and as I told, you can describe one element which describe many other elements on your page. You have relationship one to many, and
sorry.
it's more flexible.
It was question about the minuses. What's
minus.
difficulties I will face if I will use it?
Minuses. Okay. First, you must check examples on GitHub and understand how it works. And first, when you use interface, first time it is difficult to understand how it works. If you use interface and method, because you must reboot your head, and I think it is one days, and after that it's simple. Okay.
I think that we are out of time. Maybe the following questions you can ask in private.
Okay, if you have any questions, please ask me on the hall.
And the last thing, please, can you present somebody